The one thing I forgot to mention that you all picked up on is in the packet, you have the PowerPoint. It's important for me that you can see it, you can hear it, you can take it with you, you can watch the video later, you have everything there. I think everyone's figured out that that's in your packet. Second thing that's important, Brad will make his presentation, and Brad may make a comment that elicits a question for Wade. And so as we continue through the day, we're not through with Wade. And so Matt may have a comment to make that elicits a question for Brad. And so this is how we're going to roll. Brad? Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
This is a guy you want to get to know.
I don't know about all that.
Is that yours?
Yeah. Hey guys, how's it going? I want to thank Wade again. Before I talk about me at all, I just want to say Wade's the first person I ever asked to be a part of what I have at Clear Path. He's absolutely one of the most passionate people and most genuine people that I've ever known. When I hit a brick wall in my own life, starting the company that I have, and I was doing everything on my own, and I was literally to a point where it was starting to affect my ability to even go fishing and enjoy myself because I was so tired all the time. I started thinking to myself, who can I get to help me? I know much passion, family we work with. First person that came to mind. So thank you. Part of that. Thank you for coming and helping. So my name's Brad, and another found a way, a lot of help. Happened from back in 2005. Helped me, family back then. I wouldn't be alive. I'll tell you more of the story, but put it quickly, got into all the drugs, all the alcohol, all the years, opiates. I'm really working out. Lost a job at one restaurant on the beach, another one down, and lost another job. And you know what though? Not my fault. It was their fault for firing me because they had no reason to fire me. It had nothing to do with the fact that I was snorting Oxycontin. Coming out probably half dead. So, next slide. So this is a family thing. Everybody's heard that. But what does it really mean? What for me, what it means is what I've learned through doing this a lot. For every individual struggling with addiction out there, or on the spectrum, so there's at least 3 or 4 people out there that are around them. And one of the ways I like to describe it is, you know, if the addict is a nucleus of a cell and the family is the cell walls, the addict in their own mind, in my own mind, in my active addiction, I was thriving. You know, even though I really wasn't, but to me, I was comfortable. And my family was the cell walls, and they were absorbing all the impact of my behavior. And as long as they were willing to absorb the impact of my behavior, nothing was going to change for Brad. As simple as that. And so one of the things we like to teach families, and it's a very intense process for some people, is to understand how to stop absorbing all those things, because they don't mean to. They want to help, right? And especially if it's a child, you know, like mom and dad want to help the child. I don't want my children to ever experience one tiny bit of pain in their entire lives, you know, but that's just not realistic. So why do families wait for change? We have an active addiction. We develop a litany of what we call instinctive manipulations that are a byproduct of our addiction. They are not intentional. Whether that means we shut down, and won't talk to you about it? Or we run away? Or we blow up and throw things and punch holes in walls? And that's just 3 of them. There's about 50. We teach you how to not get close enough to us to make us look at our situation, and then maybe we have to be accountable for it if you get that close. So these things become instinctive for us, and they are a survival skill for us in active addiction. And so what happens is you get close enough. Something happens, whether it's a little consequence or a blow up at a family event or whatever, and we feel that you're getting that close. We're very good at watching the people around us and helping or realizing what's going on, especially our family. And we kind of tighten things up for a minute. You know, we look good on paper. Might go get a job interview, right? And the family goes, man, I think she's turning it around. I think it's going to change. I think they're going to pull this together. And that might last a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, right? But it creates a sense of false hope for the families, and they fall into it, and they fall for it every single time because they really want us to be okay. And they don't want us to be an alcoholic or a drug addict that needs to go away to treatment and work on all the deep, dark part of our soul. They don't want that. They don't want to label us as an alcoholic or a drug addict. So that false hope keeps this cycle going, and the cycle starts over once we get comfortable again. We just go back to what we were doing, and then the thing just starts over until the next thing happens where you get too close, and we tighten it up again, right? Why do we wait for change? Same answer. You know, why are we scared to act? The truth is, in my opinion, every family member who has a loved one struggling with addiction is absolutely terrified of damaging the relationship with that person. Now, they will tell you that they want to help and they want to do things differently and they want to set boundaries and they really want them to get better. But when it comes to actually sitting down and having that conversation with an individual struggling, if you break it all the way down, most of the time it's about the person that's having that conversation and how's it going to affect me. One of my mentors said when we're protecting someone else's feelings, we're really protecting our own. And that's true for me in life in a lot of cases. How do we break the cycle? All right, how do we break it? If we understand the problem and we understand the solution for what it really is, we can unify and do things differently and learn and educate ourselves to react differently. And if we do that, the cycle can break down. The truth is we don't have any control over the alcoholic or the addict, right? We can't control what they're going to do, what they're going to say, what's going to happen. What can we control in our lives? How we react. All I have is my actions and my reactions. That's it. How many people in here, raise your hand if you've ever had a loved one that struggled with addiction? Boom. Raise your hand if you ever knew someone who has enabled that loved one for many, many years. Okay. Raise your hand if that makes you mad to watch. Right? A lot of people just raise their hands on all three of those. It affects every family on some level. Very seldomly, if I ask a family a question of do they have substance use or mental health issues in their family tree, almost every time there is something there. And when they tell me there's not, I don't believe them. Next slide. 6 things to remember. Might not even be readable there. Addiction is the only fatal illness where the patient fights to stay sick. Addiction is the only fatal illness where the patient thinks they can fix the problem without help. It is the only fatal illness where substance users go about addressing their problem, but they will bargain, negotiate, manipulate anyone or anything to do less than clinically or professionally recommended. I'll go to a meeting this week. I'll go see a therapist. I'm not going to treatment. I'm not going away for 30 days, right? But I'll go do this, this, and this. If we let a person with addiction dictate their own treatment plan, the odds of that treatment plan being successful are about this much. We can't fix the problem with the brain that's sick, right? But we think we can, and we think we know better than everybody else how to fix that problem. Addiction is the only fatal illness where the patient prioritizes addressing the symptoms but forgoes addressing the causes of the symptoms. It's always about what's in here. Addictive behavior does not stop because of drug and alcohol use stops. Typically, we will get worse in treatment before we get better. And the reason for that is that I have a coping skill that is very toxic by using drugs and alcohol. If you remove that coping skill, what's left? All the instinctive manipulations that I alluded to. That's it. That's all I've got left. So I don't need to be here, Mom. The doctor said I don't need to be here. They're actually really mean in here. And the therapist, she was actually really mean to me yesterday. And I don't think I can stay here. I'll go, if you'll come get me, I'll go to 10 meetings a week. You can hold my paycheck. I'll stay at your house. I'll take drug tests every single day. Anybody heard any of that before? Yeah, we do it. We're good at it. Addiction is not about alcohol and drugs. It's about an underlying thing. Good treatment is not about teaching me how to not drink. It's about teaching me why I'm drinking in the first place. Right? That started at a very early age for me. It wasn't big. It doesn't have to be some big traumatic event. Like when Wade talked about trauma, and I 100% agree, but I think it needs to be elaborated on a little bit. Like when I heard trauma years ago, not knowing any better, I immediately went to certain places in my head, right? It doesn't have to be those things. It can be a series of events that normally occur in a lifetime: loss of jobs, loved ones, relationships, not making the soccer team, right? Because I'm out partying and smoking pot under the bridge, right? We don't process things in active addiction like normal people do. You guys have heard of the stages of grief, right? A lot of you guys I know have, right? So you go denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Acceptance really means, if you break it down, I didn't like that and it really sucked, but I'm going to be okay. You guys move through that. If you're don't have the addictive brain, it's a natural progression. It's important for you guys to understand that an alcoholic in active addiction never gets to acceptance. Every single thing I ever thought had been done wrong to me by anybody for anything and any reason in my entire life, I tossed it in a bag and I threw it over my shoulder. And I never got to acceptance. And so over time, the bag gets heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, right? And two things happened. My ability to deal with the normal daily stressors of life diminishes greatly. Everything is just too much. You ever heard somebody say that? It's just too much, I can't handle it. Think about doing that. Everything's that all the time in an addictive brain, and that's why we keep using. But at a subconscious level, the bag that I'm carrying around begins to affect me every single day, which also keeps me in the cycle of addiction, because those feelings, even subconsciously, are doing something which makes me want to change the way I feel. Because I'm not good enough. Something's missing here. Next slide. The problem. It is absolutely imperative to find the right treatment center for each individual, if at all possible. What happens every single day in our world, and it's nobody's fault, it's just the way it is. A crisis happens, DUI, blow up with the wife, whatever. And let's say the individual says, okay, I'll go to treatment, you're right. And maybe I gotta go to treatment because I got a DUI and I'm trying to get out of it, right? Google. Treatment nearest me. right? What takes our insurance, right? And this is not, and I'm kind of being funny, but like nobody would react any differently if they didn't know this, right? So we typically send our person to the closest treatment center that takes our insurance. If you pick up the phone and call 5 treatment centers, if you Google treatment nearest me, and the first 10 pop up, and you call them up and you say, I've got a problem with alcohol and drugs, but I've also got an eating disorder, and I've also got a porn addiction. I would be willing to bet you that 4 out of the 5 treatment centers would say, yes, absolutely, bring them in, we can handle that. That is a load of crap. They cannot. It is important to reach out to somebody who can help a family navigate finding the right place for each individual person, because we're all different. One of the questions we use on our assessment when we work with families to help them navigate treatment, we're not doing an intervention, we're just trying to find out where they want to go or they're willing to go, right? This sounds so dumb, but it's important, and a family would never think about it. Are they a beach person or a mountain person? Is it like cold weather or hot weather? Sounds dumb, right? Let me tell you something. You put me in the cold weather, I'm not a very happy camper, all right? I don't have to be on the beach in treatment at a spa. I'm not saying that. But if you put me in warm weather, I'm much more comfortable. All those little things matter, and a professional can help a family answer those questions and much more specific and important questions around the person and their history to figure out where the points are and where we can find a place that gives this individual the best chance of long-term recovery, as well as what environment will they grow and thrive in. You know, it's just, we have a broken system. Everybody knows that. I'm not telling you guys anything you didn't know. And I've already alluded to, you know, the root of this is always with the individual seeking pleasure or avoiding any uncomfortable thing or event or feeling. Avoidance is actually what we're addicted to, guys, not the drug. Anything I consider uncomfortable is what if you ever heard an addict runs from everything, we don't deal with anything, right? What we're actually addicted to is avoiding any uncomfortable thing, feeling, or situation. And I know I could talk about that for 2 hours, but I'm telling you, at the root of it all, I don't want to deal with anything uncomfortable. And when I found out that I could use drugs and alcohol to avoid feeling uncomfortable, all of a sudden that became my important and best coping skill for life. And I remember the self-talk in my head with the marijuana the first time I smoked it. Oh my God, this feels good. The next thought was, I must feel this way all the time. And guys, I did a pretty darn good job of it for a long time. And it worked for a while. That's the weird part, is it works. You know, I could talk to anybody. I could talk to the most beautiful girl in the room. It didn't bother me. All the anxiety went away. You know, I didn't have this feeling of, you know, something's missing or whatever. I just felt whole for the first time in my life. And if that had worked long term, it would have been pretty cool. It just doesn't. And drugs don't. A therapist told me one time, you know, if drugs worked on a long-term basis, they wouldn't be illegal, Brad. Next slide, please. The solution. I'm just breaking this down as, you know, as easily and quickly as possible for you guys, because again, I could talk for 7 hours about all this stuff. In most cases, we got to be removed from our environment. You know, in the daily grind of life, the odds of me doing the things necessary to recover and grow and get better are just not good. You know, and we have families all the time say, we don't want to send them away to the treatment. Why don't we just send them to this outpatient place and let them go during the day? That's not going to work for most of us. It's just not. Because we can go learn these awesome things from these awesome people at this awesome outpatient clinic all day long, and then we drive by 14 gas stations on the way home, and there it is, right in front of us. And we have neural pathways that have been created over time in active addiction, and we don't have the capability to reframe any of that in the moment right then. Now, there are programs out there for pilots, doctors, nurses that have this extremely long-term accountability plan for people. So those people can go to an outpatient clinic a lot of times with all this stuff hanging over their head, like losing their license, and then they leave that outpatient setting and they have this extremely difficult plan to follow to maintain their license with drug tests and counseling and all the things. That, if we could somehow make that available to the whole public, we would have a whole lot of people getting better and staying better. But that's not a reality. But those things have like a 90% success rate. So what's needed is a medical detox. Don't detox at home. If anybody tells you they're going to do that, tell them, please, no. Like Wade said, alcohol can kill you. Benzodiazepines can kill you. Opiates make you want to die. 60 to 90-day residential stay addressing the clinical needs of the individual. 30-day treatment is a load of crap. It was designed by somebody in the insurance business in the late 70s. Somebody looked at the numbers. I don't know if it was State Farm or whoever, whatever company it was. And the guy said, I think we can cover about 28 days and it comes out okay for us on the money side. And that became the gold standard for treatment in the United States. And it's been that way ever since. It has never been, it was not a clinician or a doctor or an addictionologist or anybody that said, this is maybe about how long it might take to help somebody get better. What we know now is that when you go from 30 days to 90 days of a good treatment center, your chances of staying sober long term, which the way they did this study was a year or more, go up 50%. That's big. The problem is the insurance companies won't cover it for 90 days. So if the family doesn't have resources, there's our broken system again, right? But we have found ways to find help for people and get pricing and get scholarships and all kinds of things that help people that don't have the resources to pay a ton of money to go to treatment. There are ways to make it happen, but you have to know how to navigate that system. You have to have Wade, you have to have me, you have to have somebody that has got the capability and the connections to make those phone calls to get that person help. It's very difficult sometimes, but we can do it. Develop a comprehensive aftercare plan. One of the biggest holes in our system is that the treatment centers, by no fault of their own, they're like a hospital on some level. They have a ton of specialists that are there to help the individual get better, and they do everything in their power to make that happen while they have them in their care, right? But out of the 17,000 residential treatment facilities in our country, my best guess, and this is a guess, less than 1,000 of them are very good at that long-term plan part. They go from a high accountability, structured environment, controlled for however long, right back into the world with no plan. Doesn't work, right? My goal when starting ClearPath was to start trying to figure out how to help each family develop that long-term plan in case they ended up in a treatment center that didn't do it well. Now, there's some good ones out there now that are really doing it well. Trust me, not everybody, but it's out of the vast majority still don't. Family support. That is bold for a reason and in caps for a reason. The family needs to be educated before and during this process and become willing to work on themselves. If we know it's a family disease and we're asking our loved one to step away from everything they know and to change everything about their lives, and not only to do that and work on their heart and what's in their heart and what's in their soul while they're in treatment to get better. And then we're asking, well, let me back up. That takes a lot of courage, right? If we're asking them to do that, and then we're asking them to walk out of that treatment center for however long they've been there and then integrate into some form of a recovery community, it's a whole nother ball of courage, right? Isn't it fair that we are willing to do some work and educate ourselves too? If we know intellectually, we've all heard for all these years it's a family disease, then why do we have a crisis? We send somebody to treatment, and the natural reaction is still from the family, oh my God, we got them to treatment. Let's hope that these people fix them. And then we go back to status quo in our lives. I guess it is a natural reaction. Think about it. It really is. I mean, you know they're safe. You know they're in a place that they have an opportunity to get better. And so the natural thing to do is to take a big, deep breath for the first time in I don't know how long and go back to dealing with your life. But if you do that, you are setting your loved one up for failure. Because the two things that we know are changing, in my opinion anyway, that are the most effective in changing and breaking the cycle are the family being educated and the long-term aftercare plan. Those are the things that change the game. If those things are done, the chances get much better for long-term recovery. The individual must find connection to some form of recovery community which will create the foundation needed for support and long-term recovery. There's a lot of pathways, guys. There's a slide in here that talks about Alcoholics Anonymous that's coming up. There's a lot of stuff out there that people are using to get better. I think the key I can credit to the first time I ever saw the video that my friend Rich over here is connection. Connection. Addiction systematically takes every connection that we care about from our lives. Typically, it's, in the beginning, it's our friends. We kind of back off from all our friends. We isolate, right? Then it's our jobs. Then it's our family relationships. And then if we're not lucky, it's our lives. We lose the ability to connect in active addiction. So whatever we do to connect when we get out of treatment is absolutely imperative. Groups like Alcoholics Anonymous catapult us into a place of connection because there's people there that are doing the same things that we're trying to do. They've lost their connections to life and they're just trying to rebuild it. And everybody in there understands everybody in there in a way that people that don't struggle with addiction cannot understand. It's no different than somebody having cancer and going chemo and me sitting here trying to relate to them. I didn't go through chemo. I don't have cancer. I can't relate. Through this process, clinical care and the patient begins to heal physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I have watched this happen to so many people that struggle with alcohol. I have watched them regain their lives. I have watched them regain their self-respect. I have watched them be like Wade, right? It happens every day. There's millions of us in recovery today. Millions. But the family's not supposed to know how to navigate it. Nobody gave us a handbook for parenting. They didn't give us a handbook for marriage. And they sure as heck didn't give us one for this. Takes help. Next slide, please. How can the family help seek out a professional? I think I've already kind of gotten there. There are people that can help families navigate this stuff. There are people all over the country that can help people navigate this stuff. That's why we are here. We do this because if it weren't for the people who helped us, we would not be here. Make a decision to unify and work together regardless of any differences. Guys, I have done interventions with moms and dads who haven't been in the same room for 20 years. And they were able to pull it all together despite all their differences and all their resentments and all their feelings because they wanted to save their daughter's life. That's important. Not easy to do. I can't imagine me being that person. But I've watched it happen over and over again. Stop applying logic to an addictive individual situation. We as people, or you guys that are not like us in active addiction or in recovery, can't help it, but the questions are always the same. Why do they keep doing this? They just lost their job for the 4th time. Why are they keep doing it? They just burned down another relationship. Why do you keep doing this? This doesn't make sense. From you guys' perspective, no, it does not make sense at all. And I get that. But the longer you try to apply logic to it, the more you're going to spin yourself into a chaotic mindset, and you're never going to help anybody get better. Because we're not logical in active addiction in any way, shape, or form. We're just not. We believe that the world's going to knock us down no matter what we do. We're a victim, right? We believe that you guys are the problem. My employer's the problem. The cops are the problem. Everybody else is the problem. I cannot connect, use that word again, I cannot connect to the fact that the alcohol and drugs are truly the problem for all my stuff. Now, I might be able to say, well, I got a DUI and drinking, that's a problem. But I can't connect it in active addiction that my marriage is going down the tube because of it, and that my job performance is going, and I'm getting in trouble at work, and I can't connect any of that in the active addiction. The connections and the willingness to get better come later, after the medical detox and after we start to fire properly in the neural pathways again. Trust the process and the team providing guidance. Man, it's hard to do. It really is. We've worked with a lot of families where there's one or two people on the team that just don't believe that we have any clue what we're doing. I mean, they think that the person's never gonna, well, most of them think the person's never gonna accept help in the intervention part. But they also don't believe that we have any wisdom around how to navigate all that stuff. And we prove it to them over and over again throughout the process. And sometimes we have to literally predict things and let them come true for the family to hear it and understand that we're really just trying to help them. But here's the thing, guys. Anything you do in life, if you do it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, there's a pattern, right? You see patterns. It's no different in an intervention work and what we do with families. There are all kinds of patterns. We can literally tell you what your loved one is going to say, what their objections are going to be, how we're going to overcome those objections, and what their reaction is going to be even if they say no in the intervention. There's a process and stages that they will go through if they say no in the intervention, and we can literally watch it happen. I've had so many families call and say, how did you guys know that they were going to do all those things on page 35 in your manual when they said no? How did you know that? It's not that we're rocket scientists. We're not that smart. We've just done it a bunch. It's just, I mean, and the truth is addicts are very predictable. Like especially if you are one. We've done it. All right, next slide. Family follow-through and success rates. The success rate of anything is largely dependent on following through with suggested changes. We have heard countless stories of people claiming that Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't work. In all those stories, we have not yet found one who could tell us precisely what did not work. None of them could confirm following through with sponsorship. Not one of them worked all 12 steps, nor did they do an honest inventory of their behaviors. Most of them did not get past the first 2 steps, yet they claim that AA failed. One of the biggest challenges in addiction recovery is for families and substance users is validating success rates when there is no follow-through with the suggested and overall treatment plan. Success rates depend on the substance user as much as they do the institution or organization providing guidance. Consider the analogy of purchasing a product that requires assembly. How many of us forego the instructions and blame the product for its defects? Many, many times. Next slide, please. Common misconceptions about addiction. This is one of my favorite ones. And this is, we get these questions and these misconceptions all the time on the calls that we take and working with families. The loved one will hit bottom and they will make a decision to do all it takes to get better. How many times have you guys heard, well, we just got to wait for him to hit bottom? What a horrible plan. So Wade talked about the brain, right? We know that the brain's not functioning properly in active addiction. We're working in the animal part of our brain. So the logic and the prefrontal cortex is not functioning properly. So we as a family are going to wait around for something really bad to happen and hope that the brain's just going to snap out of it and start working properly in that moment, and all of a sudden they're going to be, woo, let's go get better, I'll do whatever it takes. Doesn't work that way. But we hear that all the time. An intervention is about raising the bottom. We're bringing the bottom to the person with love, with respect, not an attack or an ambush, right? That's what people think it is a lot of times. And individuals fight every day, all day, for the rest of their lives to stay sober. I even have friends post stuff like that on social media that have been sober 15 years, 20 years. And I'm like, what are you talking about? If you work a program of recovery, I'm not waking up thinking about doing drugs. If I was, I'd just be doing drugs. It's been a long time. I'm not doing that. It's not, if you do what's necessary to heal inside, you find a spiritual solution for you, whatever that means, right? You're not waking up worried about doing drugs anymore. It's not even a thought. Live music is one of my favorite things in the world. I go all over the country to see live music. Some of those places, there's people doing every substance you can possibly imagine. Not one time do I go, oh, I don't want to listen to the music. I'm going to watch this guy over here. He's doing some cocaine. It's not a part of my thinking anymore because of working a program, right? The literature that I work with says I can go anywhere and do anything as long as my motives are true. I believe that. You know, if I'm going into a bar to hang out and try to live vicariously through some people getting drunk, that's not going to work out well in the long term. But if I'm going to a bar to listen to some music with the bands I really like, and that's really why I'm going, why would I? If recovery was about me having to not do the things I enjoy because there's alcohol in around it, then that would suck. I couldn't do it. And an intervention is not an attack or an ambush. Now, to be clear, the first model of intervention was called the Johnson model. Everybody wrote a letter to the individual struggling and expressed how their addiction and their substance use had negatively impacted them personally. That's the way they did it in the beginning, right? Literally shaming people into going to treatment. Horrible idea, in my opinion. We are the exact opposite of that. We believe in love, we believe in respect, and we believe that love will win. And it almost always does. Whether it's the day of the intervention or a week later, it almost always does. Tough love equals kick the individual out or cut them off completely. That's what the general public thinks tough love means. That's what Aunt Jenny said to do. I'd just kick her out. What a horrible plan. Again, like, we have to have a solution in place. And what happens every day is that the families finally decide to sit down and talk to the loved one struggling without a professional and any of the stuff that we do. And if they happen to do it well enough to get them to agree to go to treatment, which rarely happens because we're going to manipulate. Remember, we have all these instinctive manipulations that are a survival skill for us, right? So if they happen to pull it off, they don't have a treatment center picked out or a plan to go. What do you think an alcoholic mind's going to do if you give me 24 hours to think about whether I'm going to treatment? I can come up with 5 million reasons I'm not going to treatment by that time. So it's just, again, families are not supposed to know how to navigate it, but we don't have to kick them out or cut them off. We have to have a solution in place and a wide open door to get them the help they need. That's what, tough love should really not even be, I wish we could wipe those words off the planet. And we could just say boundaries, consequences, and accountability. Boundaries are not for them, for you guys, to protect you. 30-day treatment is effective. Nope, we already covered that. Now, with that being said, there are multiple families we work with that do not have the resources to send their loved one to long-term treatment. So what does that mean? How do we help them? That means that we send them to the 30-day program after doing the assessment and finding out which 30-day program fits this individual, what's the best place we can send them, and immediately, as soon as they get admitted and get a therapist assigned, we start working on the aftercare plan. because that aftercare plan is even more important if they're only going to be there 30 days. And if we can implement and create that aftercare plan, their chances are way up. A lot involved in that as well. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to paraphrase all this. We talked about the bottom, right? Has my loved one hit the bottom, right? So let's assume we're going to use the bottom as what I even at one point considered a bottom is the person, the homeless person under the bridge pushing their shopping cart with their brown bag, right? That's what we're going to say the bottom. Okay, next slide, please. Let's think about our loved one living in mom and dad's house, being enabled, where everybody raised their hands a minute ago, and think about these things. How much did they spend on rent last month if they're living in mom and dad's house? Nothing. How much did my loved one spend on a car payment? Probably nothing. How much did my loved one spend on food? Probably nothing. How much did they spend on their job, or did they earn on their job? Probably nothing if they're being enabled. How much money did they spend on drugs and alcohol last month? Now, this exercise is really only applicable if the individual is extremely dependent on the family, but there's a lot of those people out there. So the answer lies in that question. How much did they spend? Next slide, please. The truth is that a homeless individual rarely has enough income and has the ability to spend more than about $10 a day on their substance of choice. But if I'm living in mom's house and I'm not paying rent and I don't have a job and I'm not doing any of the things, I promise you I can manipulate mom out of way more than $10 a day. Matter of fact, I was pretty good for a long time at getting more than $100 a day. I've talked to families where the dad has been giving the kid $200 a day for 3 years. Because he's terrified of facing the problem. He's terrified of ruining the relationship with his son or, quote unquote, making the situation worse. If he's living in the house and he's shooting heroin and you've been giving him $200 for 3 years every day, how exactly are we going to make it worse? Right? So the only difference between a person that's living on the streets and this person that's not paying any bills and living at home and being 100% totally enabled, the only difference is the family. Where's the problem? The problem is the family, right? And again, I'm not blaming the family. It is a natural reaction to a very uncomfortable situation around someone we love. It is 100%, I think it's on the next slide before I get ahead. Next slide, please. Families are not supposed to know how to navigate addiction or recovery. Enabling is a natural response to a very difficult situation around someone we love. There is no shame in that. My mom enabled me almost to death. I mean, she was going to be here and she decided not because of the weather, but this woman had a long career in the healthcare industry. And at the very end of my opiate use, she stole medicine from a man that died because she was scared of what was going to happen to me. She could have lost her job, her career of 30 years. That's how strong enabling is. That's how strong this disease is. That's how strong our ability to, I think we just, as families, don't get it. And we're not supposed to. Addiction will systematically tear apart a family system. We talked about that a little bit. It will take everything. It will ruin relationships. I can't tell you how many husbands and wives who had a child struggling that we've worked with over the years that were about to get divorced or already had. Because of the addiction, they still love their kid, but they can't agree on it. They can't figure out how to navigate it. And so there's so much resentment and so much breakdown in communication that they just give up. Right? And then what happens? to the kid, then it's my fault that mom and dad broke up. So that just fuels more of my I'm not good enough, right? Which fuels more of my addiction. There are many resources to help regardless of financial status. There really are, guys. I mean, it's not perfect, don't get me wrong, but I've sent people to free treatment all over this country. You know, to be fully transparent, it's a worst case scenario to do that because most of those free treatment centers have absolutely zero clinical care. The reason they are free is because they do not have a doctor or a psychiatrist or a medical director or a clinician. So if we have to send somebody there, that's still better than nothing, but we're more apt to try and find something that the family can pull off because we want them to be able to work on the problem, which is underneath. It's not the alcohol and drugs. The landscape has changed. Fentanyl is killing people all over this country. They're putting it in everything. When I got sober, wasn't even a thing, right? And I got a relapse in my story, but that's all, we don't have time for all that. But that relapse brought me to what I do today, right? That's what happened, right? It allowed me to change my whole career path and try to find a way to help people. But the fentanyl, it's in Xan. They're making fake pills, and you guys may all know this, but if you don't, you need to hear it. They're putting it in cocaine. They're putting it in methamphetamines. They're putting it in it, and we lost 100,000 people to opiate-related, overdoses just last year. So we don't have the time to slow play things anymore. What I mean by that is there are people out there that will tell you, hey, you know what? Let's have a couple sessions with the family and let's talk about setting a little boundary and let's see how the loved one reacts. We really don't have that luxury anymore. And maybe if they're drinking and we know 100% they're only drinking, but if there's any kind of drugs involved, any day, if they buy something off the street, that's it. I can't tell you, I could name off 10 people that I know personally in the last few years. And I bet most everybody in here knows at least one or two on some level who have lost somebody to fentanyl. So we need to act, right? We need to help quickly. Next slide, please. Q&A. I know that was a lot of information. Any questions, I'm happy to answer. I know there's so much more.
I used to run a support group at West Florida Hospital Rehab Institute for a chronic illness that I have. And I had hundreds of people come through it, and I've talked hundreds of hours to hundreds of people. And one thing I found to be universal is that the families are enabling the person not to do what is needed. And the reason that I found out is so that they can blame the dysfunction on the family to the person with the illness. And so what is your message to how do you change people from enabling to helping?
Now, okay. So I can only speak for us as a company, how we believe in what we do. When I first started doing interventions, I would go and fly in and sit down with people, and I would talk to them for 2 or 3 hours about codependency and enabling and boundaries and all the things, right? We have developed a curriculum now. We fly in, we meet with the family for an entire day to plan the intervention. That curriculum is specifically designed to move them from where you're talking about to acceptance of what the situation is. When we get sober and in recovery, we have to do a lot of pen to paper stuff. When you sit a family down and you have, this is just one example of our curriculum, but we have the 10 most important categories in all of our lives, right? Our career, our health, our family, our happy, our attitude. Are we honest? Or do we have integrity? All those things. How has each important category of your loved one who's struggling with addiction been affected in each one of these categories? And so they list, their health is poor, their thoughts are erratic, their career is non-existent, their honesty is non-existent. And they go all the way down the line, and everything's negatively impacted. And so we let them see that. And they already knew it, but it's a little different when you write it down and everybody in your family is looking at each other going, wow, this is really bad. And then we flip it. Now we give them the same categories. How has it affected you in each one of those categories? And it's the same thing in a lot of cases. I mean, a lot of times you hear families say their spirituality goes up because they're praying more and they're talking to God more. But most of the other areas, their health, their career, their attitude, their thoughts, their finances, all the things have been affected negatively because of this person. That creates motivation for change when they see it for what it is. But it's hard to do it unless they see it on paper, at least in my opinion.
Hey, Brad. Rich.
Hey, Rich.
You and Wade save a lot of lives, and we all appreciate the work that you do. Just a couple comments. We talked about connection, and I firmly believe that disconnection is the driving force behind addiction. And I feel like it's just more than just disconnection from people, but disconnection from your own inner wisdom. I also feel like an addict or an alcoholic will reach out for anything that will give them some sense of relief, whatever that relief is from. I guess my question is this. Recently, I've been working with couples, and the wives are adamant about setting ultimatums, and nothing shakes them from their anger and you're going to do this or else this is what's going to happen. And I was wondering if you could give us some insights on how we can navigate that.
It's pretty common. And when we have a wife or a husband that has an addict in their system, sometimes they're just done. They're just done, and there's nothing you can do. And we have to respect their boundary of being done. But we also can, what I would do with the families we work with is another part of our curriculum, is understanding addiction from an addict's perspective, which is a lot about what Wade talked about. If we can get them to really understand that it is a disease, it's not a choice. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to ruin every aspect of my entire life, right? I surely never wanted to hurt the people that care about me, right? If I can show them that and create a little bit of empathy, then maybe there's a turning point there, right? But sometimes you can't. Sometimes we don't even have the wives involved or the husbands involved in some of the interventions because they're like, I want them to get better, but screw them. I'm done. And sometimes we've done enough damage. I know I could have, at least to my parents, I did enough damage. I wouldn't have been surprised if they said that to me at some point.
My turn. The statement you made about the common strategy people might have of let's just wait until they hit bottom. I can relate to that strategy. I know a lot of other people, friends who have dealt with that strategy. Play that scenario through. What's the result of using that strategy?
If we go that way and just say, let's just wait and see what happens. Yeah. Typically, they're going to die or end up in an institution somewhere if they have an addiction like me. Or society will intervene. That's what's going to happen, whatever that looks like. And so if we wait for the bottom instead of bringing the bottom to them with love and respect, then what we're really saying is, I don't have any way to help this person, or I'm not willing to take any action to help this person because it's uncomfortable for me and I don't want to deal with it. So I'm just going to sit around and let's just hope it works out. It might, maybe. Wouldn't have for me.
I can confirm last year about this time I lost my stepbrother. I want to thank you. Thank you, Don. Thank you for this program today. My husband and I lost our house at the beach insurance didn't pay after Hurricane Sally, so we were living with my dad, who lives not 2 blocks from here. And my stepbrother was living with his mother and my father. So my husband and I were there as well since Hurricane Sally 2020 until, so 3 years together. I got a chance to know him a lot better than I had in years past. Saw his struggle, knew about his struggle, knew him, felt I knew him, but living with someone is a bit different. So I had a bit different perspective at that point. I also felt like it wasn't my place. I was a guest, so how much should I be inserting myself into kind of watching this dynamic go down? And I wish I had done more. I did some, but I wish I had done more. So initially, it's the question. There's a cue in the slide there. My question is, in the beginning of your talk, you said, okay, so if you call 4 out of 5 of the places that you call your nearest addiction treatment center will, oh, well, my person has this issue, this issue, this issue, can you help? Oh, sure, we can help, but probably they can't. How do we find the right place for our people or for this process so that we can, I guess that's part one. Part two is underlying my story, I guess, which is, I guess I'm testifying, yes, please. Yes, please. I think Scott would be with us today had we done a good intervention like this one. I see that. And I feel kind of horrible about it on this side of it. So let me be a cautionary tale, but how do we do that from the literally, like, how do I find that place? If money was not a problem for them. It was just, well, we don't really know. We don't really have a place. We don't really, we'll a little bit is we'll wait till rock bottom. A little bit, it's a little bit of all of the stories that I've heard.
Right, a lot of different opinions. I wish I could tell you that there's a whole lot of people out there that do what we do as far as that assessment is concerned to help navigate the treatment. There are quite a few, but they're not in every city by any means. But even a clinician might be able to help kind of another set of ears and eyes on the situation to help. You don't want to trust calling a treatment center, like I said, because they're going to tell you they can fix it. You got to find somebody that doesn't work for treatment centers specifically like us, like we don't do. That's one reason I love what we do, is because I have absolutely no, as my grandfather used to say, dog in the hunt as far as where they go to treatment. I just want to find the best place for them, and that requires me asking a lot of questions about this individual. And so these facilities out there that just, the people call and say they're an alcoholic and they got 3 DUIs, bring them in. I need to know way more than that. Like, I get at least once every 2 weeks from somebody, even clinicians and people that I know. Hey, Brad, give me the top 3 treatment centers in the country. Money's no object. Nope, not doing that. Don't know enough about the client. Like, I can give you the top 3 treatment centers, but if that client has anything that, like specifically, one of the best examples is an eating disorder. Like, there's only a few places in the whole country that can treat an eating disorder and addiction at the same time, right? But they don't tell you that, right? So the key is a lot of questions have to be asked, and if you're here and anybody is here, they can always reach out to us, and if not, I guess you'd have to try to find a clinician that could lead you to somebody like an ed consultant or somebody like that.
Respond. Okay, nobody leaves here today certified as an interventionist. Okay, you leave here today with a new body of knowledge that allows you to triage. And what I hope for clinicians and clergy is they leave here and they have a much better ability to assess, to triage, to ask questions, and then make a phone call and say, I'm not sure how to go with this or what should we do. I think we are giving people tremendous amount of information about how to proceed. And I think that's the important part for me for the day. one more question. We're going to take a break real quick and continue on.
Hey, Brad, I know you're familiar with me.
I am.
Okay, I'm Tracy Corley. I work for Dr. Winslet. I am recovering. I'll have 31 years not drinking as of September 16th. Came from a family of an alcoholic. I will cry because this is what I do when I'm in a group. Went through a son who had addiction. He's still struggling. Have talked to Brad. But I've tried the hard luck and kicked him out. And honestly, he told me that helped him because it made him get to a bad place. But the one thing that I realized, and you and Don helped me with this last round, was you become just as sick as they are. I cannot tell you what it was like, if you haven't been through it as a mom, to try to stay one step ahead, because I didn't want him to get arrested to where he had a legal thing on his record and it would affect the rest of his life. And I didn't want him to die, but I was curious. I've got a friend that's going to come with me tonight. I said, please, because she's struggling so hard with her son. And what I keep hearing from her is, I'm afraid. He lives with her, and she's afraid to kick him out. One, because he's violent. He's very scary. But two, if I kick him out, he has nowhere to go. And how do I wrap my mind around the fact that if I do that, that there's a good chance he's going to kill himself? And how am I going to deal with that? And I can't answer that for her. I know I'm going to try to point her to y'all. But as a parent who's been on that, you're caught because you want your child and you want them alive. But in the same vein, it's like I told her, I said, there came a point I didn't like Taylor at all. And I remember you pulling me in your office and asking me one day, I'm going to ask you a question, Tracy. And I said, okay. And you said, are you ready for Taylor to die? And I sat there for a minute and I said, if this is what his life is going to be, yes, because this is not living. And I'm just curious how you help somebody that is so frightened. I know what you're going to say to a degree. He's already dying.
Oh, yeah.
It's suicide, but...
Does he have a history of suicidal attempts?
Yeah, he's got some mental health disorders. He's been diagnosed bipolar. I've tried to tell her, you don't really know what he has as long as he's abusing a substance. But when he uses, yes, he will pull a knife across his throat, slash his wrist. It's nuts.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's a tough one, man. It really is. I go back to, our curriculum is designed to help with all those things, but I can't imagine from a parent's perspective what that would be like. The idea of kicking them out is what we hear and what I think sticks in our minds, and the fear of what might happen if they get out there and something bad happens keeps us from taking any action. And that's a reality for every parent that deals with this. But if we know what we know is true based on that enabling analogy, that they're actually more likely to overdose surrounded by enabling factors than they are out on the street. And that's a fact. Because they got more money, more access, and more ability to get high when they're in mom and dad's house. So what I would try to do is help mom understand that she's already living like he's dead. She's terrified every single moment of every single day. And that she has two choices. And this sounds maybe harsh or whatever, but the truth is we keep doing the same thing we've been doing, we're not going to get anything. We have to make a decision as a family. Are we going to continue the path we're on and watch this person continue to destroy their lives, or are we going to do something? And something different doesn't mean kick them out, just boo, you got to go. Something different means kicking them out with a 100% wide open door to help themselves where they can get all the help they need. That's the difference, right? So if you kick them out, all right, hold on, I forgot about this. So if an addict says no in an intervention, what does that really mean? that means that addict is looking at you in the face, at all your family, and telling you, I'm not changing anything and you aren't either. Right? So if you kick them out with a place to go, they can get all the help they need, food, shelter, all the things, are you kicking them out or are they kicking themselves out? It's a different way to look at it. It doesn't make it easier, I know. But again, it's at some point, I believe wholeheartedly that a unified family with love and an objective professional to help guide that family through a process that allows them to approach that loved one with love and respect is stronger than any one person's addiction.
Thank you.